the subject of Israel as a genocidal project. Afterwards, there'll be plenty of time for discussion and debate. Just use react and then the raise hand function if you'd like to speak. Or if you would like to contribute but you don't want to speak, just put something in the chat and indicate that you'd like me to read it out. Over to you, Jack.
Thanks, Billy. Israel and Gideon's Chariot, Operation Gideon's Chariot. Now, as we understand things, this is a leaked document, so who knows whether you can trust it, but the idea seems to be in the immediate term to divide up the Gaza Strip into 3 civilian zones, between which there will be Israeli military zones. And if you're in the south, to travel to the middle or travel to the north, you've got to cross Israeli checkpoints. And this seems to be a prelude to what Netanyahu calls total occupation, or maybe it is what he calls total occupation. We just don't know. What we do know, though, is since March the 2nd, all supplies, all outside aid has been cut off. And what we've got are widespread reports of people living on the edge of starvation. The United Nations talks about, as we sit here now, something like a fifth of the population of Gaza are showing distinct signs of starvation. I have to say that throughout this, long siege and war on Gaza, I've both been horrified by the death toll and at the same time, how should we put it, surprised that it isn't much higher. Now, I've read reports, from the Lancet that says that the Hamas figures are conservative because they're actually dealing with bodies, and the suspicion is that there are plenty of bodies buried beneath debris. And the Lancet also talks about premature deaths. So people dying from their wounds, people dying from trauma, kids dying from preventable diseases. Nonetheless, what we seem to be on the edge of is a qualitative leap in terms of death. Now, of course, in terms of starvation, in general, people actually don't die from starvation. If you're a doctor, the chances are when they look at you, you're dead. They won't write starvation on it. The chances are you've died of something else. But the fact of the matter is, if you deny people food, what happens to them is the body deteriorates and they become more prone, more vulnerable to diseases, to conditions that we were just in the normal run of the mill, we would just shake off. So that the population as a whole is becoming more vulnerable to some pandemic, to all manner of otherwise, unthreatening conditions. Now, in terms of Israel and its political economy, I'll deal with that at the end of my remarks on Israel and Palestine. In the meantime, though, what we have is more authorities. And what I'm talking about here is legal authorities, people who are expert in genocide law. And what I'm reading is we've gone from a situation of where there was a sizable body of legal opinion that judged that Israel was either in danger or actually carrying out a genocide. And we've seen a shift towards even conservative experts in this field look at the evidence and say, yes, Israel is either preparing or carrying out a genocide. Now, what we need to understand by a genocide is not looking at it after the event. We need to understand it during the event. That's what we're talking about. And the analogy that I've read is a dimmer switch. So it isn't an on-off. Israel is, Israel isn't. But the fact of the matter is, if you deny aid, if you deny food, if you don't have in place proper sanitation, electricity supplies, it's switching the dimmer light down. It's switching it in the direction of genocide. So that's the opinions that I've read. And we're not talking about one or two. We're not just talking about Amnesty International. As I indicated, we're also talking about people who would view themselves as conservatives with a small c. One lawyer, though, who doesn't want to use the word genocide, of course, is David Lammy, Britain's foreign secretary. I don't know what he's waiting for, but it's clear that if there's genocide going on, if the dimmer switch has been dialed in the direction of where even conservatives are talking about genocide, the fact of the matter is that Britain is complicit in this. It's provided diplomatic cover for Israel. It views Israel as a friend. And indeed, and I didn't realize this until recently, if we look at the top rung of the Israeli Air Force, i.e. American-made F-35s, I didn't realize actually the percentage of British parts that went into it. My understanding is it's something like 20%. So we're not talking about a widget here or a widget there. We're talking about a substantial British manufactured contribution to the top end of Israel's killer machine. And yes, it's true that Britain has cancelled a number of licenses for arms that are going into Israel, but they are still supplying. Why? Because they're going into American manufactured weapons. So it's not Britain that's supplying them directly, it's Britain that's supplying them indirectly. But that makes Britain complicit in what is, I would argue, and I'm simply following what I'm reading in terms of so-called experts here, what is going on is a genocide. Okay, so we've now arrived at another fateful landmark, 53,000 going up. We've all seen the figures daily, 100 then, 150, 130 each day. But clearly, the chances are that we'll start to see thousands every day, maybe even more than that every day. And of course, the plan that I've described with this Operation Gideon's Chariot, there can be no doubt that what that is ethnic cleansing. What we're talking about in terms of where it goes maybe is a different question. But if we're talking about the Palestinian population being evacuated, forced to move from the north, forced to move from the south, the creation of a middle zone in that, the splitting of the population into three zones, there's no doubt that is ethnic cleansing, because what we have is zones of an equal, square mileage that are exclusive to the Israeli so-called defense forces. Now, again, I don't know the result. Maybe something's happened in Doha. We're told that talks are taking place. There's talk of hostages. There's talk of a ceasefire. I don't know. I've been in meetings all day, so we don't know. At least I don't know of any results from talks. I'm going to move on. I'm going to come back to Israel-Palestine. But what I'm going to do now is just turn to Israel-Palestine as manifested on the streets of London yesterday. The organisers say that the figure was something like 600,000. Yes, I know, demonstrations are old-fashioned for some, but I think that, that they do illustrate the depth of feeling, the anger of people, the collectivity of people. I think it's worthwhile commenting on the demonstration. And again, I'm sort of trying to get my mind around this. I'm used to going on demonstrations, and as you can tell, I'm sort of long in the tooth, where I used to be able to come to some sort of judgment of how big a demonstration was as a seller of a newspaper, how long it took to pass me by. So a demonstration of an hour, well, I've got an idea how big that is. 2 hours, 3 hours. If it's more than 3 hours that it takes to pass you, that is big. What we're into now, and I think this is because of police conditions, is, as you know, famously with an army, your front rank is always told to march slow. Your front rank is always told to stop and wait for the rear guard to catch up. Why? Because, one step forward by the vanguard, actually the rear guard can't keep up. So the rear guard has a natural tendency to string out, to lag behind. And what we have on this demonstration, I can't tell you how long it took it to pass me by, but I was near the front of the demonstration as it entered Whitehall and marched down to be parallel to Downing Street. And I waited to the end by marching back along the Strand. And so about halfway down the Strand, I came across the end of it. But what struck me was how straggly the demonstration was. How strung out it was. Yes, every once in a while, you had a sort of mini demonstration in the demonstration. So a contingent, believe it or not, of imams, the Revolutionary Communist Group, Manchester Against Genocide, Newcastle Stop the War Coalition, medics in solidarity with Palestine, which was just something to look at. And I think the explanation there, the explanation for that doesn't lie with John Rees and Chris Nineham, who are certainly vastly more experienced than I am of organizing and stewarding demonstrations. What it is the police impose time limits on these demonstrations. And what they say is you have to disperse from Westminster, I don't know, by 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever it is. So in terms of getting in the speeches, in terms of getting there and then getting out to abide by those conditions, what you have, and again, I tried to keep up with the front, and I do mean keep up, what you have is them marching at quite a lick. It's true occasionally they stop, but most of the time they are just, walking at walking speed without stopping. And as I said, what that results in, along with the consideration of these mini demonstrations within the mini demonstration, is this thing strung out. Old demonstrations that I'm used to would have stewards throughout the entire demonstration and would be communicating with the front, stop, it's straggling, or telling people, which they shouldn't be doing, speed up, speed up, speed up. You should actually slow the front down rather than badger those at the back. What was the social composition of this demonstration? Well, compared with the more recent ones, I would hazard, and again, this is just a subjective take on it, I would say that the mosques mobilized for this demonstration, maybe in a way that they haven't done so recently. So, for example, I know it's not a mosque, but for the first time in quite a time, you had the Muslim Association of Britain with their banner right at the front. Now that's new, not in the early demonstrations, but on the latter demonstrations. And I've already referred to imams, a contingent of imams. But you also had various mosques. You definitely had the mobilization of what I'd call the Orthodox, if that's not a misuse of the term, Orthodox, Shia and Sunni Muslims. Now, I'm not going to be able to tell you that I can spot, who's exactly what when it comes to various groups and shades within Islam, but that's my impression. I'd also say, again, very impressionistically, that in terms of the age profile, I'm not saying it was more my age generation, but I wasn't struck by, my God, what a lot of young people. Of course, there were loads and thousands of young people. Nevertheless, I wasn't hit by this is a young demonstration. I'd also say that while, of course, the left was there, I can't say that the left, and maybe this is an organizational decision. We didn't have a contingent, we didn't have a stall, and I think a lot of groups simply said, we'll sell our paper. Quite frankly, we don't bother anymore. We're into the culture, certainly in London, and I'm sure it's true outside London. When it comes to most people, they're used to getting a free paper. People enthusiastically take the Weekly Worker. Why comrades in the SWP or SPEW don't just give it out, I don't know. Counterfire does, for example, and the Morning Star does. Producing a few hundred extra papers or a few thousand extra papers is incredibly cheap. You're just simply paying the cost of paper. You're not paying the plate. The amount of time it takes a printer to run it through is a marginal cost. So from at least my angle, give it away. It's a scattergun approach, but it does allow you to speak and get an idea of where people are at. I'd also just want to comment, and this really takes me back to my opening remarks, the sort of strange politics that exists at the moment on these demonstrations. And I'm not just talking about the demonstrators, I'm talking about the organizers. So I stayed to listen to the opening speech by the comrade who is chairing the various speakers. And of course, they said, welcome, and we've got this speaker and that speaker. And then what struck me is both the, I think, realistic assessment of where we are at, which I've just given. Here we are with Israel launching a full-scale invasion, talking about dividing the Gaza Strip, of getting rid of the Gazan population from whole zones within Gaza, talking about the danger of starvation, accusing Israel rightly of preparing for or being in the middle of a genocidal operation. And that goes hand in hand with talk about how the resistance is bound to win. That if people resist, you cannot lose. And indeed, we had the speech, by the comrade in the chair, talking about how Palestine will be free. Where will it be free? From the river to the sea. And we'll keep marching until Palestine is free. And we'll keep marching until there's peace in the region. And I was just struck, well, actually, marching is good. I've already said why. It enables you to gauge your fellow citizens, for want of a better word. What do we collectively feel about this? Look at how many we are, and we're just the tip of an iceberg. For every one that turned up, there'll be 10 who wanted to come or would have come. You get that feeling from a demonstration. But the idea that a demonstration in and of itself is somehow going to translate into victory in Palestine, I think is profoundly delusional. I've already quoted, the foreign minister. I don't know what number this demonstration was, but I've been on well over a dozen, and some of them even bigger than yesterday's, for example. And when I look at the British government, I don't see anything other than crocodile tears. I don't see any decisive action by Britain. I don't expect any decisive action from the British government. Why? Because if we're talking about demonstrations, yes, they're a manifestation, but they need to be connected to a political project if they're going to be effective. And the problem I've got with that is, precisely expressed in the back page of this week's Weekly Worker, talking about what seems to be the possibility, maybe we want to put it stronger, the likelihood of a Jeremy Corbyn. I'm using the word lightly, but, some sort of new left party with Jeremy Corbyn in it, and inevitably acting at least as a figurehead of such a party. And the problem I've got with that is precisely, let's call it the Francis test. And if you don't want to call it the Francis test, we can go one better. Instead of having a dead Pope, we can give it the Leo test. And I look at the SWP's six socialist principles that to stand for this new party, they're saying, hey, these should be the minimum requirements. Okay, I look at them. You're against austerity. I think Pope Leo, didn't he, in his first, I don't know what they call it in religious terms, but I call it speech with his inauguration. So he's on the side of the poor. I think that means you're against austerity. And I go down the list. And even when it comes to lesbian and gay rights, he's not for the persecution of lesbians and gays. He might not want women in on the clergy, but nonetheless, rights, yes. When it comes to Palestine, what's the position of the dead Pope? What's the position of the living Pope? I think they would be against genocide. I think they would be for aid coming in. I think they would say that they stand up for Palestinian national rights. So what we're talking about, when we're talking about this party, this political project that could perhaps be connected with this demonstration, it's broad, it's broad, it's broad. It's so broad, you could have the ruler, the monarch, the emperor of the Catholic Church included. And the problem precisely with that is it's the right wing that therefore set the limits in order to maintain its broadness. What you have is your MP, your councillor, your Muslim Association of Britain, your imam, your Pope. who sets the political limits. And therefore, this project cannot be connected to a genuine socialist project, with a genuine socialist project that aims for getting rid of bourgeois property. After all, that would include the property of the mosque. That would include the property of the Catholic Church, which, my understanding, is worth billions and billions and billions in terms of land, in terms of arts, works of art, shares, government bonds, you name it. So the Pope might be someone who stands up for the poor, but the Catholic Church, while it denies the right of popes to pass on the wealth of the Catholic Church to their children, that's certainly true. Nonetheless, this is an institution that does pass on its wealth to those who the Pope, in general, if they live long enough, has actually appointed. In other words, the majority of people that elected Leo were appointed by Francis. Anyway, my main point here is you get this strange mixture of, on the one hand, the danger of genocide, the danger of mass starvation, with this, I think, naive optimism. And I'm all in favor of optimism, but the fact of the matter is that, ruling classes can inflict a genocide, can inflict a political defeat on those who resist. To resist isn't automatically to win. The only thing that you can say about the Palestinians that means that you can say that they ain't going to win is that the Palestinians are part of a wider Arab nation. And I don't think Israel, and I don't think the United States is going to defeat the Arab nation. On the other hand, I think it's a real danger that Israel, along with the United States, not only militarily, which is no problem, defeats Hamas. That was always going to happen. And not only Hamas, but also the Axis resistance, remember that? But also then inflicts a second Nakba on the Palestinians. And this really brings me to Donald Trump and his visit to the Middle East, where he lifted sanctions on Syria. I don't know what that means in terms of how we characterize at the moment I can't remember the name of the organization. Anyway, the regime in Damascus. I'll leave it at that. I don't know where exactly that puts them in terms of alliances, whose creature they are. They will be someone's creature sooner rather than later. That's for sure. But also what we had is Trump doing big business deals, but also renewing his talk. What's it this time? The freedom zone in Gaza. I think that those who seriously take this as some sort of project to clear the Gazan population and to make Gaza the 51st state or something along those lines are profoundly mistaken. This isn't the United States extending its power to Gaza. It's giving the green light to Israel. And it's about the United States being in some way complicit in what, who knows how many plans Israel has drawn up to finish the job. But one plan that we've heard of is to deport, and this is an American plan. Again, I'm not saying this is the only plan, but is to deport, or maybe to get to volunteer, hey, you're starving. Do you fancy getting on a plane? Do you fancy getting on a boat? In a couple of hours, we can take you, you've guessed it, we'll take you to Libya. And apparently there are negotiations ongoing between the United States and, I don't know, I've read the Libyan government. Well, what Libyan government? My understanding is there are at least two regimes, one in Benghazi, What's their capital? Benghazi. Anyway, I've forgotten, doesn't matter. It will come to me, but you get the idea. That what we actually have is two regimes in Libya. I don't know which one they're negotiating with. It doesn't matter. Okay, they dump 1 million people. Who feeds them? What do they do? How much is the regime in Benghazi or Tripoli? Thank you, me prompting myself. Get paid for this, or does Saudi Arabia pay for it, or Qatar? I don't know. Either way, the point about this is that doesn't make way for an American development in Gaza. No, it makes way for Israeli settlers. That is absolutely clear. That's why the Israeli coalition government is welcoming these speeches from Trump and his various various members of his diplomatic staff, or various members of his cabinet, and anyone who watched the Louis Theroux settlers can get a clear idea of what is intended. Why the settlers on the West Bank look at Gaza and say, well, it's right for our colonization project. And in that context, I also thought it was worthwhile just mentioning the counter demonstration. As always nowadays, along the route somewhere of these big solidarity demonstrations, there will be a Zionist demonstration. My guess, I haven't gone and mixed with the Zionists, and haven't had the opportunity to talk to them. Maybe I should at some point. So they're, again, very impressionistic, not scientific. I readily accept that. But my impression is that these are people from Likud and to the right. And so, for example, they are holding placards. Remember when Sue Braverman was talking about this terrible slogan that demonstrators were shouting, Palestine shall be free from the river to the sea, and how they described that as anti-Semitic. And we had, endless BBC, ITV, Sky coverage, and parliamentarians getting up and denouncing us and all the rest of it. And how, Jews felt threatened by such language. If you march within 100 yards of a synagogue, people would feel, fear for their lives, and other rubbish along those. Well, here we have the Zionists holding up in the colors of Israel with the Star of David, from the river to the sea. Here we have them holding up placards saying, we decolonized this land 77 years ago. Is that threatening? Well, it is, because what we have now is a living genocide. We not only marked yesterday the first Nakba, but what we are experiencing, that's what I'm arguing, what we're experiencing is the second. And this looks like it could be even more terrible for the Palestinian people, because this will not be limited just to Gaza. It's bound to go over onto the West Bank. That is what is finishing the job is all about. Anyway, these Zionists, I'm guessing Likud and to the right, were also singing. They were singing happy birthday to the Nakba, not the state of Israel, not the declaration of independence by Israel, but the war that followed, that saw 750,000 people pushed out of their villages, pushed out of their towns, never to return. And they were singing happy birthday, happy birthday. And again, as a giveaway, I was there before the main demonstration arrived at this counter demonstration. So we're dealing with a few advanced vanguard people arriving at this demonstration, various people shouting slogans, and we had the stewards, waiting for the main demonstration to keep us separated. They were separated by a barrier and a line of police, and then another barrier. But it was also interesting because as the demonstration approached, as it came up the road, as they could see the demonstration approaching, their lead person on their microphone, that big speaker system, says, "Here's Ben Jamal coming, along with his boyfriend, Jeremy Corbyn." And then you could see the political correctness come in, because, of course, what the Zionists like to pose in Britain, and what they like to pose sometimes in Israel, is that they stand up for Western values. That's how they try to put themselves over. You have some of them, for example, wearing, a rainbow, sign, for example. But I think on that particular occasion, and the fact that the main speaker quickly corrected himself, I think the mask slipped. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But that's why I'm also convinced that this counter demonstration wasn't of Labour Zionists or so-called centrist Zionists. This was the hard right, as I say, celebrating the Nakba, basically celebrating what's going to come, what they hope will come. And what you've got there, of course, isn't the politics of, how should I put it, liberal toleration. You've got the politics of patriarchy. What you've got is the politics of intolerance. That was on display yesterday. Again, just a quick comment. And again, I don't know what the politics are, what you want to make of it, and the why. I don't know. I just thought it was just worthwhile bunging in a comment on the BBC. There were a lot of comrades going around with BBC silence, which is true. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Has the BBC reported a demonstration in London yesterday of 600,000? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I missed it. But I don't think so. I have seen newspaper articles talking about demonstration of thousands, which is true, just happens to be hundreds of thousands. But the BBC, has got a reputation, even when the demonstrations were allowed to take place on the doorstep of the BBC, which was deliberate because the BBC would ignore these demonstrations. So they thought, well, we'll have it literally outside the gates of the BBC. They still ignored it. Okay, but it was interesting. I listen to the news on Radio 4, and I can't remember what day it was, but we had Tom Fletcher. Who's Tom Fletcher? I hadn't heard of him before. Maybe you have. Either way, he's the. I won't give you his full title. I'll run out of steam. But he's the United Nations Undersecretary for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief. His full title carries on, by the way. Anyway, what was interesting, he was addressing the United Nations, and the BBC News took the political decision to have his speech in full. And that was 10 minutes, and they gave it uninterrupted. And his speech wasn't just, oh, there's some people going hungry. This was a speech saying there's genocide going on. There's people starving going on. You've got to do something about it. So this wasn't just some, usual speech by some usual bureaucrat. This was, well, it seemed to be, from my angle at least, heartfelt. It seemed to be genuine. Okay, what can the UN do? We've had UN agencies branded as anti-Semitic, as some sort of adjunct of Hamas, and therefore no UN workers, no UN aid going in. But clearly that was a political decision. Now, was that just the political decision of the editors of World at One, Radio 4? I don't know. I would have thought it might go higher up than that. I don't know whether the editor who took that decision is still in place or has been threatened. I don't know. But I did think that was interesting, because I do think that not only is the British government complicit in this genocide, if you maintain silence, if you turn your eyes, if you avert your gaze from what's going on in the Middle East, in Gaza, I also think you're complicit. And I think the BBC has been complicit in this. After all, most of its coverage throughout this war since October the 7th and the prison breakout has really been about, well, this is Hamas, or it's on the one side this, on the one side that, and then government propaganda about anti-Semitism and how Jews feel so threatened. Well, they don't. I even saw Zionists basically, with bravado coming down to the actual end of the demonstration. I don't know what happened to them, but I can't imagine that they were physically assaulted. I can imagine them being verbally assaulted, but they would deserve that. Okay, I just wanted to finish. Why is Israel a genocidal project? It's not because of Netanyahu. It's not because of Trump. It's not the right-wing coalition. The first Nakba begins with a Labour government, right? An Israeli Labour government. And if we go back to the origins of modern Zionism, read Theodor Herzl's The Jewish State. This is the sort of foundational document of modern, what is called political Zionism. And what he says quite explicitly is that the vanguard in terms of Israel, our colonization project, they dropped colonization, I would guess, I don't know, but maybe after World War II with, the African independence movement, I'm guessing on that. Either way, they dress themselves up now, not in the language of colonization, but anti-colonialism and national liberation. But back, in the 19th century, they had no compunction, no thought about use of the word colonization. Perfectly open, perfectly frank. This is a colonization project, and the vanguard will be farmers and laborers. We'll put them in first. We'll use them to build the new Israel. We need an imperialist sponsor. Herzl was quite clear about that. We'll need the backing of rich Jews. He was perfectly aware of that too. But the idea would be you displace the Arab population. You shift them aside, you buy them out. And the difference between Herzl and LabourZionism is, if you take the revisionist Zionism, where Likud and Netanyahu come from, is they were quite explicit that these people won't budge. They'll have to be forced. We'll have superior arms, we'll have superior backers, and we will win. That was revisionist Zionism, and basically revisionist Zionism accused LabourZionism of peddling a nice fairy story. They recognized that force would be used, but my argument is that force was used in 1947, 1948 by LabourZionism. It was LabourZionism that oversaw the first Nakba. It was LabourZionism in 1967, the Six-Day War, that also oversaw the seizure of the Gaza Strip, but also the West Bank, and also the Golan Heights, which has since been annexed. And of course, the West Bank has been heavily colonized, along with the annexation of all of Jerusalem. So this isn't some right-wing aberrant Zionism. This is Zionism. And so Israel is, to use a phrase that you aren't meant to use, are you, is a racist project, but it's more than that. It's more than that. It's actually predicated on ethnic cleansing. It's predicated on eliminating a people, the original people of that land who are being colonized. Why? because the model of colonization isn't a work colony, isn't an exploitation colony. It's not about exploiting the native labor. So it's not modeled on, the British Raj in India, where you have colonial officials overseeing a vast Indian workforce. This is modeled on North America, on Australia, not least on Tasmania, where they got rid of every Aboriginal, in total. That's what Herzl, that's what LabourZionism, that's what revisionist Zionism looks at. Why? Because what we have is what Kautsky talked about is a work colony. And I've already described it in Herzl's The Jewish State, but also it's worthwhile adding Moshe Machover's other title for it, as well as saying, yes, it's a work colony. He also talked about it being an exclusion colony. So although you've had Palestinian labor at the margins of this isn't what the political economy of Israel is about. The political economy of Israel, because it's a democracy for the Jewish population, is predicated on a Jewish majority with Jewish workers to the exclusion of the indigenous population. And that is what makes it so dangerous. And that's what needs to be understood when we lightly talk about resistance must win, and when we loosely think that because they've got an apartheid system in Israel stroke Palestine, that means you can have an equivalent outcome that you had in South Africa, which was an exploitation colony, not an exclusion colony. So we need to understand, while there are similarities between Israel and here, there, and various other colonial examples, we need to get down to basics. And that's why basics are important. It enables us to understand what the danger is at the present in terms of this government or any other conceivable government that Israel produces. Okay, what's my time? 47. So I'm going to start to wrap up now, William. I think I'll only deal with one more item. I did have others. Those in the CPGB can listen to the report to the Provisional Central Committee and the discussion. You have to be a member or a candidate member for that, I'm afraid. But what I'm going to turn to next is Keir Starmer's Island of Strangers. And when I heard it, I mean, I haven't, gone through the text, but I mean, Keir Starmer, I think, is a London lad, right? I know his constituency. It's just down the road from me. It's the next door constituency to my own. We live in the same borough. So we have the same town hall. We have the same, bin service and all the rest of it. We have, broadly speaking, the same sort of population that you get in London. And all I can say is, look, Keir, you're a little bit younger than me, but nonetheless, okay. Look, when I was brought up here in London, and when I went to school as a little wee nipper, I don't know, because I never really thought about it that way. But when I do think about it now, and I go, Jesus, this is my church upbringing. Jesus, I go, at least half my schoolmates, at least half my friends, I don't know, I haven't gone and ticked it off. At least half of them were born outside Britain or had parents who were born outside Britain. Certainly in terms of people I know now, who I meet, sell the weekly worker to, buy with, have a chat with, and all the rest of it. I'd actually say that figure is above that. Her downstairs, her grandparents, where are they from? Well, half of them are from Ireland, the other half are from the Tsarist Empire. Over the corridor from me, where's she from? From Croatia. That's not unusual in London. You meet people for the first time, they're strangers. You meet them again, and they cease being strangers and they become neighbors and they become friends. And so all of this, this stuff about this island being an island of strangers, well, yes, if none of us talked to each other, if none of us worked, if we lived in the equivalent of, a hermit crab shell and didn't mix with each other, then fair enough. But we do mix, Sir Keir. We do marry. Our children mix. We mix. Our parents mix with people. And if you take London, I'm not saying it's an exact copy of Britain. It's not. It's a strange, nice place for me, at least, to live. As far as I know, when I was a kid, half the population in London weren't born in London. And that's because of people coming in partially from other parts of Britain, but also from abroad. I've already said, in terms of my class, I can remember Yasmin's. I can remember, friends of mine from Ghana. I remember friends of mine from Nigeria, including a friend of mine from Nigeria whose father, I think, ruled Nigeria for his shortest living president of Nigeria. I think he carried out a military coup and lasted a week. I remember him in particular because my friend brought in live bullets into school with him. So he's sort of seared on my brain. But, the fact of the matter is that is what London is like. And now the figure is, as I understand it, it's not just half the population of London come from the outside, half the population were born outside London. Well, what's the problem? And if we have education, if we have mixing, if we have measures that encourage assimilation, it's an entirely positive experience. So I don't recognize this. I don't recognize Sir Keir's warning. And when people talk about rivers of blood and Enoch Powell, yeah, it's that. It's not the same, but it's basically coming from that agenda. Now, we all know what it's about. It's an attempt to pull the rug from under reform. But again, this is mistaking what's really going on. It's not Nigel Farage. It's not reform. That's like looking at Israel and saying it's all Netanyahu. It's all this coalition government. What we're dealing with is the failure of neoliberalism. And it's a reaction to neoliberalism that people are reacting to. Just look at the letter this week in the Weekly Worker from the anarchist David Douglas, and he talks about the mines have closed, the steelworks have closed. We've got taxi drivers, but with no one to give lifts to up here. He thinks we're all Londoners. Well, I'm a Londoner, Dave, but actually the people you're talking, we did have a meeting in Manchester. The Weekly Worker is done electronically, by the way, with godmates outside London. Either way, the point is there. That is what reform is. Now, you can ask the question, can governments out-reform reform? Well, on one level, they can, because they can actually put it into practice. On the other level, no, you can never out-reform reform, because reform can always up its rhetoric and can always appeal. And the fact of the matter is that what Keir Starmer's rhetoric has done has added to the fire, in the same way that if we take David Cameron, remember the bright idea he had, the pledge, the election pledge. As soon as he said it, I just went, this is ridiculous. He's not going to be able to fulfill it. He's making a stick for his own back. He talked about limiting migration to the tens of thousands. And then, of course, you have Hong Kong, Ukraine, and the push factor of IMF readjustment and debt and all the rest of it. So, of course, he couldn't succeed. But you've given a stick to reform. Okay, and then we had Rishi. Remember Rishi? He's going to stop the small boats. Oh, sorry to use an Anglo-Saxon. Of course, he's not going to stop the small boats. And in the same way with Keir Starmer, he's saying migrants are the problem. No, when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to schools, when it comes to public services. They've been stripped to the bone. You know, when it comes to jobs, when it comes to prospects. No, it's not migrants. No, it's the system. That's the key question. And that's why I come back to the question of what sort of a party. You know, the common sense of the left is we need a broad party. But I've already critiqued or tried to critique the problem with the broad party approach. It's the right that will set the agenda. And we've seen it, you know, with the SWP in the Socialist Alliance. And we saw it above all with the SWP in Respect. And what it is that who's the first one that says abolish all immigration? That isn't realistic as far as your left former Labour MP is concerned. No. Free abortion? No, says the Imam. So where do you start? And you start, the left starts to sell out. And okay, so what do you do about real action on climate change? Well, pass some more pious resolutions. I would say the only real action you can take in terms of climate and readjusting our species relationship with nature is getting rid of the capitalist system. I'm not arguing that capitalism reorganized into some sort of firefighter state couldn't do X, Y, and Z. But in terms of something that is acting in the interests of humanity as a whole and nature, I think the only solution, and I do mean it, the only solution is socialism, or what we could call it, you know, to use a better word, is communism. I think that is the answer. And we need to be able to be open about that. And we need a party that can tell the truth about that, and not a party that can't say that because it will upset its right wing. And that's why we need a mass communist party, not a stodgy, soft left, everyone is welcome, including the Pope sort of party. I'm going to finish with that, William. Thanks very much.